Hello, and welcome to the Permission to Breathe podcast, a transformative space dedicated to providing a sanctuary where you can inhale deeply and exhale freely, embracing your grief journey unapologetically. I am your host, Dr. Tammy Isaac, here with you every Monday to offer comfort, guidance, and hope. Together we'll navigate this path, finding moments to pause, reflect, and breathe. Let's begin this journey side by side. Today's episode is brought to you by Collateral Beauty, a Black woman's metamorphosis of grief, self-love, and healing by Dr. Tammy Isaac. For generations, Black women have carried invisible burdens, grieving in silence under the weight of societal expectations and trauma. Now it's time to embrace healing, self-love, and the beauty that remains. In Collateral Beauty, Dr. Tammy Isaac invites you on a powerful journey through grief, faith, and renewal. This book will guide you to process grief and trauma with intention, discover self-love and inner strength, build deeper connections through sisterhood and faith, and embrace vulnerability, forgiveness, and gratitude as tools for growth. Take the first step toward embracing your beauty, your story, and your healing journey. Don't wait. Grab a copy today on Amazon. Welcome to the Permission to Breathe podcast. I'm Dr. Tammy Isaac, and as always, I am grateful that you've taken the time to breathe with me today. This month, February, holds a special significance. It's Black History Month. It's a time of reflection, celebration, and honoring the legacy of those who came before us. For generations, Black communities have carried grief and trauma and loss through slavery, violence, discrimination, and other injustices. But within that same legacy are stories of courage, healing, and hope that have shaped who we are today. Grief in the Black experience is complex. It's not just personal, it's collective and historical. It's woven into the fabric of our identity, yet so often we're taught to suppress it, to be strong, and to keep going. But today, I want to invite you to sit with me as we explore the power of acknowledging that grief. Because in honoring that pain, we also honor the people who endured it and find pathways to healing for ourselves and future generations. In this episode, we'll discuss generational grief and trauma, how Black communities have coped and preserved through centuries of loss, and how healing practices rooted in our culture have helped us reclaim joy and strength. We'll also talk about breaking the silence, especially for Black women who often carry the burden of both personal and generational pain. So together we'll reflect on ways to create healing legacies for those who come after us. So whether you're here to learn, reflect, or find comfort in your grief journey, I want you to know that you're not alone. Let's take a deep breath together. Let's honor our past, embrace our present, and breathe in hope for the future. I'm so glad you're here. Let's begin. Grief in the Black community is not just personal, it's generational. It's the kind of grief that doesn't start and end with us. It's inherited. It's woven into the fabric of who we are as a people. It is passed down through stories, experiences, and even our bodies. This is what many refer to as generational grief or historical trauma. It's the pain rooted in the brutal realities of slavery, segregation, and systemic racism, traumas that have impacted generations of Black families. Imagine the grief of enslaved mothers who were separated from their children, or the sorrow of communities torn apart by lynchings and racial violence. These weren't just isolated events. They they shaped the collective psyche of Black America. Even after slavery ended, the trauma didn't just disappear. The grief from the trauma lingered through the terror of Jim Crow, through the fight of civil rights, and even in the present with racial violence and inequality, um, still is still a part of our lives. This generational pain can manifest in so many different ways. So for some, it shows up as a deep mistrust of institutions like healthcare and education, institutions that have historically failed or harmed us. For others, it's in the way we internalize silence around grief, thinking we have to tough it out because that's what our ancestors had to do to survive. This unspoken grief can often affect us emotionally and physically when we're not consciously aware of it. Now, research has shown that unprocessed trauma can literally change our bodies and our brains. It can be passed down through generations, impacting how we cope with stress, how we grieve, how we view the world. This might sound heavy, and it is, but I also want to highlight something else. In the face of this generational grief, Black people have developed powerful ways to heal and to hold on to joy, believe it or not. We've leaned on our spiritual practices, faith and prayer and worship have sustained us through even some of the darkest times. We've created music that speaks to our pain and our hope. You have gospel, you have blues, jazz, and our soul music have all served as expressions of both grief and triumph. We've told stories to keep our histories alive, to remember the sacrifices of our ancestors, and to inspire future generations. And we've come together as communities, whether in churches, family gatherings, or civil rights movements, just to lift one another up. But even with these beautiful ways of healing, the silence around grief in many Black families persist. Okay. It's something we'll explore more deeply later in the episode. But for now, I want to just encourage you to reflect on how generational grief may have shaped your own life. Have there been moments when you felt the weight of loss that weren't yours alone to carry? Or times when you were told to be strong instead of expressing your emotions? Especially we tell our little boys that, right? Recognizing this inherited grief is the first step to actually healing it. So when we acknowledge the pain of our ancestors, we end up giving ourselves the permission we need to grieve, not just for their loss, but also our own, right? And when we grieve, we can begin to heal, not by ignoring the past, but by facing it head on with the strength of those who actually came before us. Throughout our history, Black communities have faced unimaginable grief and trauma. Yet, we've also developed powerful ways to cope and to continue living fully. These practices, rooted in our culture, are essential to how we process pain and nurture our healing. Let's start with faith. So, for many of us, our faith in God has been a source of peace in times of overwhelming loss. And the church, particularly in Black communities, has been a central place of healing. It's where we've come to lay our burdens down through prayer, worship, and fellowship. We've cried out to God in our grief and found comfort in knowing we're not alone in our suffering. Prayer has been a cornerstone of this healing process as well. Sometimes words will fail us in the moment of our deep sorrow, but prayer doesn't have to be formal or structured. Sometimes just sitting quietly with God, or shedding tears in His presence is enough, right? Our tears, after all, are their own form of expressing a way of releasing the pain that, we've been carrying. Then there's also music. Music has always been a lifeline for our peoples. During slavery, spirituals were more than just songs. They were coded messages of hope and survival. Songs like Swing Low, Sweet Sweet Chariot, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot reminded our ancestors that freedom and deliverance were possible. And over time, these spirituals evolved into our genres: blues and jazz, gospel and soul, each giving voice to our pain, to our dreams, and to our joy. For me, there are certain gospel songs that have carried me through, even in my own grief. When I lost my mother, there were moments when all I could do was listen to music that spoke to my soul. Those songs that reminded me that I wasn't walking through my pain alone. And they gave me permission to feel everything I needed to feel while also reminded of God's presence. And one of those songs is remembering growing up, my mom would play her records, and one of her favorite songs was I Come to the Garden Alone. And I would sing those songs as a way of remembering her and remembering our times together growing up, and how her playing those records. And another song was I'll Fly Away, how that filled her heart with joy. And so it helped me to be able to process my grief while also using those spiritual songs to remind me that I'm not on this journey alone, that, that God is with me, and that he's walking with me, and he's talking with me along life's narrow way, right? So they're very beneficial. And then there was a time in my life where I was feeling very alone, very not supported, not feeling like things were working out. And I was just very down in my spirit. And I remember coming home from church one day, and I just laid my head down, and I was just laying there. And all of a sudden, out of my spirit, I just started singing, "It won't always be like this. He'll perfect those things that are concerning you. And sooner or later, it'll work in your favor. It's turning around for me." And when I noticed I was singing it, I think I was like singing it the second go round, because I didn't even realize I was singing it. And when I started listening to the words of what I was singing, I realized God was blessing my spirit to uplift me, to know that the place that I was in at that point was not a place that I was going to stay, but there was a change, a shifting, a blessing that was coming for me. And so music, like prayer, it allows us to begin to process our grief and what we're experiencing in ways that words can often do that. They connect us to something greater than ourselves. There's this collective memory of survival and healing that comes when we allow the melody of music to flow through us, right? There's another key way that we as Black people have coped, and that is through storytelling. In many Black families, storytelling has been how we preserve our history, our culture, and our legacy. We hear stories about our ancestors, the challenges they faced, and the triumphs they achieved. These stories remind us of the strength and wisdom we carry within us, inherited from those who came before us. For example, I think of the stories my own mother shared about our family's journey. Not many people know, but people who grew up with us know that my mom immigrated here to the U.S. Her and my siblings are all originally from a place called Dominica in the West Indies. And so she would, tell stories about them growing up and the challenges or experiences they have. Sometimes I listen to my oldest sister, who would also tell stories about the things that they experienced and the things that they went through. And those stories that my mom shared are like a source of strength, right? Because especially after her passing, because they helped me stay connected to her and to the lessons that she wanted me to carry forward from hearing about the challenges, the struggles, but also how she made it through, and then also made it through not just herself, but also bringing my siblings along. So then now we have this new life together here in the U.S. And so I appreciate remembering or reflecting on some of those stories, or even times when my oldest sister will share some stories about things that they used to do when they were younger and have experienced. There's something else I want to address: the importance of community, right? So we've never had to grieve in isolation. Community has always been a vital part of how we heal, whether it's gathering with loved ones after a loss, attending church services, or simply just sharing a meal together. Those moments of connection has helped us feel supported and understood. And, you know, our ancestors, there was always community. They didn't have anybody else. It was the Black community, and they basically stuck together, and their grief was shared. Somehow along the way, as we carry grief and we carry things from one generation to the next, and of course things get adjusted and changed, but somehow we've gotten to this place where grief is like our own, right? And we don't share with anybody, and nobody wants to be a part of our grief. We've kind of become shunned to that, and feeling like we have to be resilient in everything because of what we've gone through, or because of what our ancestors gone through. But I feel like if anything, we're going to carry with us into the future from our ancestors into this generation to the next generation is the fact that there should be communal grieving, and that nobody should have the responsibility of grieving alone, but that we should grieve together as a community, which helps support the healing process and helps encourage us to remain healthy as we grieve whatever tragedy, trauma, or loss that we've experienced. Okay. The Bible tells us to weep with them that weep, right? It says rejoice with them that rejoice, but also weep with them that also weep. So we can't just celebrate the joys with people and not want to be alongside of them as they go through their weeping. Now, let's think about it. When somebody in our community expresses a loss, we show up, right? We bring food, we pray, we sit with them in silence, offering the gift of presence. And these acts of care remind the grieving person that they're not alone, that their pain is seen and also shared. So this collective support helps lighten the emotional burden, of grief. Yet, despite these beautiful traditions, there's still a silence around grief in many Black families. We've often taught to be strong, to suppress our emotions, and to keep moving forward. But holding in that pain does not serve us in the long run, and it can create emotional walls that prevent true healing from actually happening in our lives. And it's time for us to break that silence. To begin expressing grief is not a sign of weakness. It's an act of courage. It's how we honor the depth of our losses and then begin to release the pain that weighs on us. And I want to encourage you today to lean into the practices that bring you comfort and also strength. Pray, sing, tell your story, surround yourself with people who hold space for your grief without judgment. Whatever it is, find yourself embarking or partaking in those practices to support your healing, not just for you, but for the generations to come. Are you grieving and feel like you're struggling alone? You don't have to walk this path by yourself. Book a virtual session with Dr. Tammy Isaac at Breathe Grief Counseling Center. Visit us online at www.breathegriefcounselingcenter.com. Dr. Isaac will help you put your emotions into words. She'll help you reduce the feeling of isolation. She'll help you understand that everyone grieves differently, and also help you prevent unhealthy coping mechanisms. Take control of your life with world-class counseling sessions today with Dr. Tammy Isaac. One of the biggest challenges many of us face in our grief journey is the silence. We've often been taught, whether through words or actions, that we should suppress our pain. In Black families especially, there's a long-standing expectation to be strong, to keep going no matter what, and to not let anyone see us cry. But where did this silence come from, and how can we break it? How can we begin to break it? For generations, Black people have or were forced to survive under conditions where showing vulnerability could be dangerous during slavery and Jim Crow. Expressing grief or fear wasn't always safe, right? Our ancestors had to keep their emotions hidden just to protect themselves and their families. Strength became a survival mechanism. Over time, that need for survival evolved into cultural norms that taught us to equate strength with emotional suppression. But let's be honest, that suppression takes a toll. When we push grief down, it doesn't go away. It lingers in our bodies and minds, sometimes manifesting as anxiety, depression, or even some type of physical illness. And the unspoken grief of past generations can influence how we cope with pain today, can and has. So, if you've ever found yourself holding back tears because you were told to be strong, you're not alone, honey. It's something many of us have experienced. Now, I understand why this silence persists. No one wants to be seen as weak, especially in a world that already places so many burdens on us. But I want to challenge that belief today. Expressing grief is not weakness. It's necessary for healing. In fact, acknowledging our pain is one of the most powerful acts of strength and self-awareness that we can offer ourselves. Breaking the silence doesn't mean you have to share your grief with everyone. It's about finding safe spaces where you can express your emotions freely. That might be with a close friend, a family member, a therapist, or even with your faith community. These safe spaces are where healing really can begin. I remember a time speaking with a woman who had recently lost her brother. She told me she felt like she couldn't cry because she had to hold it together for her family. They were all looking to her for strength, and she didn't want to, let go. She didn't want to break down or even let them down, right? But in that moment, I asked her, who is holding you together? And she paused and tears started to flow. It was the first time she had allowed herself to cry since her loss. And in that moment, she realized that it was okay to release her pain and that her family wouldn't crumble because of it, right? That's the one thing about silence. It convinces us that if we express our grief, everything around us will fall apart. But the truth is, people who love us want us to heal. They want to support us just as we've been supporting them. And I think we miss that. And we also miss giving people the opportunity to pour back into us what we've been pouring out. And we pour out, pour out, pour out. And then we become empty. And that's when we start to have these different challenges within our spirit, our mind, our bodies. And it can't focus to move on because we've been holding everybody else up and never allowing them to hold us. Now, I also want to address a specific experience within our community, the unique burden that Black women often carry. We are frequently expected to be the backbone of our families and communities. We're praised for being strong Black women, but the strength can come at a cost, a major cost, right? Many of us have been convinced or conditioned to carry not only our own grief, but also the emotional weight of those around us. We become caretakers, holding space for everyone else while neglecting our own needs. And this is something that also has become just our norm. Like we feel like or believe that this is the way it's supposed to be. However, it's time to release that burden. Black women, listen to me. I want you to hear this. You do not have to carry everyone's pain. You are worthy of your own healing. You are allowed to grieve. You are allowed to rest. You have permission to breathe. Okay? Now, breaking the silence around grief starts with small steps. Maybe it's telling a friend, I'm struggling today. Maybe it's journaling your thoughts or finding a support group where you feel seen and heard. Or maybe it's something as simple as just giving yourself permission to cry when you need to. Remember, healing is not a solitary journey. It happens in community. It happens when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and supported. And when we break the silence, we create space for others to do the exact same. Because we're all carrying something. We all have something to grieve. And we break generational cycles of suppressed grief and begin building legacies for those who come after us. Let's take a moment to address a topic that many of us know all too well: the stigma around grief and mental health in Black families. For generations, we've been taught to keep our struggles to ourselves, to maintain an image of strength no matter how much pain we're in. And the message is often what happens in this house stays in this house. We're told not to show weakness, not to cry, not to seek help from outside the family. The mindset didn't appear out of nowhere. Historically, our ancestors had to navigate a world where showing vulnerability could be dangerous. So during slavery and segregation, expressing emotions like grief or fear could lead to punishment and exploitation. So survival required a type of stoicism that became deeply ingrained in our culture identity. And while that survival mechanism served a purpose in those times, it can now become a barrier to our healing. Today, that silence around grief still lingers. When someone experiences a loss, they might hear things like be strong for your family or don't let people see you cry. And there's this unspoken expectation to push through, to keep it together for the sake of others. But suppressing grief doesn't make it disappear. It often manifests, of course, in other ways, like I mentioned earlier: chronic stress, anxiety, depression, or even physical illness. The pain we don't acknowledge will eventually find its way to the surface somehow. There's also a stigma around seeking professional mental health support. In many Black families, therapy is seen as something foreign or unnecessary. We hear things like just pray about it, or what is a therapist going to tell me that I don't already know. Don't get me wrong, prayer and faith are vital tools for healing, but they don't have to be the only tools that we use. Okay? God has also gifted us with professionals who are trained to help us work through our pain, right? So we're not just going to pray about it, but we can also pray and add some additional tools like therapy. Now, breaking the stigma requires us to shift how we view grief and mental health, right? Our perspectives have to change. We need to create spaces where it's safe to talk about our emotions without fear or judgment. We need to imagine a world where we normalize asking for help. where going to therapy is seen as an act of self-care and not a sign of weakness. Imagine families gathered to not only celebrate life, but also to support one another in times of sorrow. It starts with us, guys. We can be the ones to change the narrative. We can model emotional honesty by being open about our struggles. When we share our grief stories with others, especially with younger generations, we break the cycle of silence. We show them that it's okay to feel, to cry, and to seek healing in whatever form they need. I remember one woman who told me she didn't want to tell her family she was going to therapy. She was afraid they judge her or think she was crazy or something. But after a few sessions, she began to I began to notice a shift in her, but then she also began to notice a shift in her own self. And she found it so much easier to process her emotions and to express what she was feeling. And eventually, she shared her experience with her family. And her surprise, her openness encouraged one of her siblings also to begin to seek help. So her willingness to break the cycle became a gift to her entire family. And this is the power of vulnerability. It creates space for healing, not just for ourselves, but for those around us. When we talk about our grief, we dismantle the shame and the fear that has kept us in silence for so long. So listen, if you've been holding back, if you've been afraid to share your pain or to seek help, I want to encourage you today. Take that first step, whether it's having a conversation with someone you trust, finding a support group, or even making an appointment with a counselor. Know that you are worthy of care, compassion, and healing, and you do not have to carry that burden alone. As we bring today's episode to a close, I want to say thank you for spending this time with me. We've explored some deeply personal and cultural topics, generational grief, the way we've learned to cope, the stigma around discussing grief and mental health, and how we create healing legacies for ourselves and for future generations. Grief is a journey, not something that we can rush or ignore. It demands that we slow down, reflect, and feel every part of it. But we still know that healing is possible as we slow down, as we reflect and feel every part of it. It comes through honest conversations, through prayer and spiritual practices, through music, storytelling, and building supportive communities. It comes when we give ourselves permission to breathe, permission to release the pain that we've been holding on to. To my beautiful listeners who may be struggling with grief right now, I want you to know that you are not alone and that your grief is valid and your healing matters. And there is hope for brighter days ahead, even if you can't see them right now. Take things one step at a time, one breath at a time, and remember to be gentle with yourselves, offering yourself grace along the way. Now, as you go forward, I encourage you to think about how you can honor your own healing journey. Maybe it's by reaching out to someone you trust, starting a new self-care practice, or sharing your story with someone who might need to hear it. Every step you take toward healing is a step toward freedom, not just for you, but for those who will come after you. If this episode has been meaningful to you, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share your reflections on social media or leave a review wherever you're listening. And if you know someone who might benefit from today's conversation, I do invite you to share this episode with them. Thank you so much again for being here with me today. I'm honored to walk with you on this journey. And until next time, remember to take a deep breath, to honor your emotions, and to nurture the love and healing within you. I'll see you on the next podcast, A Permission to Breathe. Take care and be well. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Permission to Breathe podcast. I hope today created space for you to breathe and find peace on your journey. I invite you to join me again next Monday for another episode as we continue to navigate this path together. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share the podcast. Until next time, take care and keep breathing unapologetically.